My name is Ron Gleason. I wrote the book, The Death Penalty on Trial, because I believe as a pastor and as a theologian, there is a consummate need in our society today to reach out to the man and the woman in the pew and to provide them with the information they need as Christians to engage not only the secular culture, but to engage in Christian conversations as to why they hold any particular ethical position. The Bible has a great deal to say about the death penalty. We know in particular from the Old Testament that there were a number of laws given so that if those laws were transgressed, the lex talionis, or the death penalty, was inflicted. In the New Testament, that seems to have been narrowed down a little bit, and there was a distinction between laws that were crimes and vices. For example, in the Old Testament, adultery was punished by the death penalty. In the New Testament, that's the province of the church and not the province of the state. So we have a difference there in that in the Old Testament dispensation, church and state are pretty much one. In the New Testament, that's not the case. So the Bible has a great deal to tell us. I would go first to the Ten Commandments. The Ten Commandments would say in the sixth commandment, you shall not murder, not you shall not kill, you shall not murder. We have early on in Genesis, in the post-flood situation with Noah, when Noah and his family come out of the ark in Genesis 9:6, they're told that since man is created in the image of God, if that life is stricken in an unlawful manner, that a life must be taken. And then in the New Testament, probably the pivotal text would be Romans 13:1-4, that speaks about the state bearing the sword. I think what we need to keep in mind is that in the Scriptures, we have a very, very high view of the sanctity of life. That's why as Christians we are opposed to abortion. But at the same time, this high view of the sanctity of life is not absolute. That is to say, God provides certain instances where a life should be taken. It's still held in high sanctity, but at the same time, it's not absolute in the sense that no matter what you do, a life never may be taken under any circumstances. So that's why it's not inconsistent for a Christian to be pro-life and also pro-death penalty. Apparently, God really didn't care that much about the deterrent, in as much as he simply said, this is what you are to do, and it will be a deterrent to others. Although we do have instances in the Old Testament scriptures in particular that speak to the fact, and thus all Israel will see and they will fear. So I believe that is a legitimate thing to say. The secularists, however, are opposed to this. A number of the one man that I react to in the book says, we really can't say. The statistics are inconclusive. Well, they may be inconclusive in one sense, but if the death penalty is applied to a convicted murderer, then there has been a real deterrent applied in the sense that that person will never commit that crime again. The whole idea of someone being convicted of murder and then being let out is one of the biggest problems that we face in our society today. The recidivism rate is incredibly high. But beyond that, we also know that the judges will let these people out, and these people often will go out and murder again. They will take another life. Now, in the Old Testament, God appended a reason why we should do this type of punishment swiftly. The refrain that we find in the Old Testament goes something like this, and thus you shall purge the evil from your midst. Now, in America, we are doing a very poor job of purging evil from our midst. We are really allowing evil to walk around among us, whether it would be a child predator, whether it would be a murderer who has committed serial crimes and then is let out, whatever it is. But we're not doing well in that department at all. Well, for those who oppose that, I believe that the Christian voice ought to be heard. We live in a pluralistic society. We hear that constantly. Anytime you turn on the news, almost, people will argue it's a pluralistic society. Nobody should be ramming their views down anybody else's throats, although that happens on a happens quite frequently. The Christian voice must be heard. I remember reading a work by a man named Sidney Alstrom, who was a professor of history at Yale, called The Religious Life of American People. And somewhere around page 300 and something, he makes the point that the nation was founded on these principles, but also the nation was guided by the churches and the pastors who stood up and said what the Bible said. That voice needs to be heard today. I believe that one of the great indictments on the modern church is that she has been too silent for too long. She has been more enamored of teaching the people how to be entertained rather than equipping them to go out to minister into society and to bring a cogent Christian argument to the table.